Right, hi guys. We're just about to begin. If I could just check while I'm waiting for the last few people to come in, is my mic level okay? Lovely, thanks Andy. Yeah, we'll just give it a couple of minutes and then we'll crack on. In fact, let's get my screen going. Okay, great. So I think I'll crack on. So thanks for coming today. I actually have a guest with me today. I have another colleague of mine called Chris. The reason I have him with me is he's actually an expert on Enado, and basically he's here in case my mind slips and I forget how to do anything. He will swiftly remind me how to do it. It also means that he can answer any questions that I might not know the answer to. He's going to be joining me for this. Say hi, Chris.
Hello, everybody.
So before we crack on, what we're doing today, and this is a follow-up from last week's webinar, where I sort of introduced Enado to you. What we're going to look at today is actually building a project from scratch. We're just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to focus on integrating Enado with a few source devices and a video matrix. We're going to use a HDANYWHERE matrix. Obviously, you can use any video matrix with this, but there's a few neat features that I'm going to show you that are only possible on a HDA matrix as well. So kind of kill two birds with one stone. I'm going to explain to you why the HDA matrix is so good, and we're going to show you some how to do it with Enado as well. Just a reminder, for attending this, anybody that attends one of these webinars can get a massive discount on a demo Enado unit. So you can get one for 99 ex VAT plus a year's license. So if you fancy having a play with one, we've got a really great deal on those at the moment. So just drop me a message or message your sales manager and say you're on the webinar and you'd like to take advantage of the demo deal, and we'll sort that out for you. That is not a problem. We sold quite a few of those off the back of last week, so I imagine a few of you have got these now. But if any of you haven't, by all means, come and get one. Right, so I am going to switch to a screen share. And we are going to go to new project. So this is a blank Enado project. This is actually a unit we have here for demo. We've completely wiped it, so we're starting from scratch. There's no devices saved to this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a very simple project to show you what it can do very quickly. So to start off with, we need to create a new project. So here we have the project section. In here, you can essentially start a new project. You can have multiple projects on the same box. So it might be, for instance, that you have multiple projects and actually you might have different projects on the same property. So it might be you have a layout for small phones and a layout for tablets, and you direct those devices to different versions of what is essentially the same project, but maybe with a slightly different layout. But we're going to start from scratch. So we're going to open a new project. This project is called HDA Demo. Create project F. So we're going to create a project. So before you start a project and start creating rooms and creating commands, the first thing you're going to want to do is get all the commands for all the devices that are going to be in your project. So to start off with, what you're going to want to do is this button here, which is active device commands. So at the moment, the Enado has no devices on it. So it's the same as with Control 4, we haven't downloaded any drivers for anything yet. So the first thing we're going to do is add the devices we want to use. So in the case of this, what we're going to do is there's a couple of libraries here. You've got the Enado command library. So these are drivers essentially that are written by Enado. So they're a little bit more, they've got a few more features in. And then you've also got the global cache database, which is basically everything else. So if there isn't already a specific Enado driver written, you can still make one on the spot using a global cache database. We're going to use a mix. I'm going to use some pre-made Enado commands and then some just generic device commands from the global cache database. So to start off with, let's add in a few devices. So the first thing we've got is we have got a HDANYWHERE, and let's say we're going with a MHub Pro 2 4x4. So let's add that as a device in. So it's now adding that device. So what it's doing is downloading all the commands for that device and making them available in your project. Let's add a few more. So we're going to add in a, let's go with a SkyQ system, but we'll use the IP driver in the case of the SkyQ. So let's add that in. Let's have an Apple TV, but in fact there's only an IR driver for Apple TV, so we use the IR driver for the Apple TV. Then we might have a couple of displays. Let's use global cache for those. So let's say that we have a couple of, I don't know, how about some LGs? Where's LG gone? Oh, there it is. So a couple of LG TVs. I'm not sure which model this is go. They've got a couple of code groups. Let's assume that our TVs are in code group 1. So let's add those in. Whilst doing that, I'm check if there's any questions. No. Okay. So this is going to take a while. Obviously, there's a lot of codes for TVs, so adding all those in. So now we've got our LG TVs. Anything else we need? So we've got a matrix, a couple of source devices, TVs. Let's add an AVR. Let's have a look at what we've got. So let's say that it's a, and let's go, what have we got? Let's go with a NAD receiver, which is the one we've got on demo at the moment. Where's that gone? I don't know, let's just go with any of these. Let's go with that one. So we've added in our devices. Now, what this basically means is now when we create zones and commands and things like that, we have access to all these devices. So the next thing we have to do is we've got a few devices here that are IP devices. So what we have to then do is define the addresses of those devices. So we do that in Tools. We go to I/O connectivity settings. So this is where we define various inputs and outputs. Now, let's start with our IP devices. So we've got add Ethernet device. So we're going to add a couple of Ethernet devices. If you've got them on your network, you can actually detect them. But in this case, I'm just going to customize them because we're sort of doing a hypothetical install here. We haven't actually got these devices on our network. So we're going to add a custom device. And here are our two devices that we currently have saved on the box IP drivers for. So let's start with the HDMI MHub. Let's say that its IP address is, let's say it'll be this. So that's our IP address for our matrix. I also need to get a name so it's easy to recognize. It's called MHub. So let's add that. And let's also add our Skybox because we have an IP driver for our Skybox. Let's call it SkyQ. And let's say that our SkyQ is on this address. So those are our two IP devices. Now, the next thing we have to do, and this is where the sort of the HDNO matrix really comes into its own, is typically in most control systems, what you have to do is if you've got multiple IR devices you need to control, your control system either has to have IR ins and outs, which some do and some don't, or you need an adapter that can generate IR commands. So sometimes people use global cache. So actually, Enado typically, when it used to work with Wirestorm, you needed an additional Enado IP as IP to IR device to generate the IR commands. Now, one of the really cool things about the HDANYWHERE stuff is the HDANYWHERE stuff actually lets a control system use its IR ports. So what we can do here is we've actually got here are all the HDANYWHERE 4x4 system has 9 IR outs. So it's got the first 4 IR outs are matrix end. Then it's got another 4 IR outs that are receiver ends. These will be by the TVs. And then you've got an AVR IR out for an additional IR in the rack. So what I'm going to do, just for simplicity, I'm just going to name these. So let's say that IR out 1 is going to be our Sky Q. This is going to be our Apple TV. And then we've got 2 TVs. So we're going to have Sony TV in the cinema and Sony. It was LG. I went with you know. Oh, it doesn't matter. So LG TV kitchen. Just change that. Okay, and we have a NAD AVR. Okay, so those are our ports. Another thing I need to do is I do just need to remind the system where it's directing those commands at. So we just put the IP address of the matrix in. So now we've added some Ethernet control ports for sending commands at Ethernet-based devices, and we've also added some IR ports. So if you're using an MHub system, you can do this without, you need no additional hardware. But if you were installing it with a different matrix solution, you would need to buy an IR expander, so a box that can generate IR commands. So now that we've done that, the next thing we need to do is just add in some activities. So this is just for, I've actually pre-downloaded these. So what these are is these are just like remote control layouts for different devices. So I've got one for an Apple TV and a Sky HD. The Sky HD and Sky Q box are the same. But just to show you how you would do a new one, if you want, you can go on this online library. Then you've got all the pre-designed layouts, and from there you just download the one you want and then drag and drop it here. No, I don't want to restart my computer. Let's ignore it for now. So once you've got those are just your your basic remote control layouts. So those are already done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start creating our rooms. So just to keep it simple, I'm just going to create a couple. So the first room, and all you do is this: as you add rooms, to start off with, it's very intuitive. You can either navigate into it to see what's inside it, or you can edit the properties of that room. So to start with, we're just going to call this one. So we're just going to call this cinema. Oops. Sorry about that. Just smacked my mic over. Hold on. So we're going to create a cinema. Check there's no problems. No. And then we're going to choose our icon for the cinema, just so we know what it is. You can also add your own icons in if you want to. So, this is just stuff that's presets, but you can put whatever you want there. So we've got that. And then we can do all the other stuff you'd expect. You can change the colors of everything. You can basically change everything. You can change the background. You can change the size of these buttons. But as I say, for now, we're just going to keep it simple. So that's our first button. Then we're just going to create another one. And this button is going to be our kitchen. So we just edit that. Kitchen. Okay, choose an icon. Let's go with this knife and fork. It's the kitchen. Fine. So we've done that. So these are our rooms. So let's start with the cinema. So what we're going to now do is we're going to navigate into the cinema. So this is where we create what we call our activities. So these are buttons that can do things and where we create our commands. So let's just start creating a couple of commands. Let's just do some simple matrix switching commands. So let's start with a button that puts sky on. So let's call this button watch sky Q. So this is our watch sky Q button. So let's pick an icon for that. We actually have a sky logo preloaded. So here's our sky button. So this is where it's sort of this is where we sort of start adding a bit more into this. So what we're going to do is we need some commands like this is what happens when you press this. So let's start looking at that. So this is the command page. And this is basically where you can build your actions of what happens when you actually do something. So to begin with, we're going to need to power the TV on. So we're going to add a command. And this TV is going to go to a Sony TV. And there's no code there. Oh, no, we're doing LG, weren't we? There we go. That's right. So LG, we've got our codes. Now, fortunately, I believe LG actually have slightly more in sort of useful codes, but they do have a power on. So luckily LG have a discrete power on and off commands. It's very frustrating when you've only got power toggle commands because basically the system has to know if you're on or off already. But luckily, because we've got discrete codes, we have a power on command. The next thing to do is to tell the system where that command is being sent to. If you remember, we added the mHub's ports as commands. So this is in the cinema. So this port here, if we say it's going out of that port, it's going to send this command out of that port in that room. So we've had an LG power on command. The next thing we're going to probably want is we are going to want to switch our matrix. So we add another command. So we're going to our variable HDANYWHERE commands, and it's, let's say that the cinema room is output A on the matrix and our Sky Q box is input 1. So video out A in 1. We don't need to define a port for this, I don't think. Actually, we do, sorry. Yep, it's an Ethernet command. So because it's an IP driver, we go to here. Okay, so we can see this is an IR command, this is an IP command. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of a delay just to give it time for this all to happen. So we add a second delay, and then we're going to have another command in, and this is going to tell the TV to switch to HDMI 1, which is where our matrix is. So again, that's going to the LG TV for the cinema. Done. So this set of commands will now power on the TV, switch the matrix, wait a second, and then send a HDMI switch command to the TV. We might also want to, for instance, also turn our AVR on. So we have a NAD AVR. I'm sure somewhere here there was a power on. So we also power on, and we're going out of the NAD AVR IR port. So done. So we've also switched our AVR on. So that is it. So that set of commands is for that button. So if we press this button, that is what will happen. Now the next thing is now we want to create one for the Apple TV. Now obviously it's going to be quite annoying having to do this every time, but a lot of the commands are the same. So what we will now do is we will take this command, and we're going to grab them, and we're going to select them all, and we're going to copy these. And what I'm now going to do is create a new button. And this button is going to be Apple TV. We're going to give it an icon. Here's an Apple TV one that we made earlier. Put that in. So we're going to add our things in. And what we're going to do is we're going to paste those commands in. Now, obviously, these aren't quite right but it's mostly the same. So what we're now going to do is just quickly edit this. So now, instead of doing video out to input 1, we're going to do video output A, input 2. Done. So now we quickly create our next button. So by doing this, you can go through and you can create a set of buttons that just do your commands. And we can change these so everyone needs to look nicer and stuff. At the moment, it's all a bit rough and ready, but what you can do is you can edit all this to make it look nicer, and you can change the positioning, and you can change the colors and where they're placed and all sorts of stuff like that. we won't go into that too much, but fundamentally, now we've created our first two buttons. So let's go a step further. So what I now want to do is create an interface in these. So to do that, what I need to do is go here. And it's SkyQ, so we're going to select where we're sending the commands to. And then we are going to add our activity layout for SkyQ. Click OK. Save that. And now if we navigate into our SkyQ box, we've got our menu. Now we've already assigned a default port. So what this means is every button here, it looks like a couple of these images are broken, so maybe they've been deleted by accident. But you can see what every button is doing and the command it's sending, and where it's sending it to. So this has just created a simple interface. We'll do the same thing again for our. So we need to. Oh, actually, I've gone back a page too far. Hold on. So go to Apple TV, edit its properties, give it an activity layout. This is our Apple TV. Okay, done. Editing. But other thing we need to do is we will need to define a port where all that's going to be set. So here's our Apple TV port. So any commands generated here are going to go to this port on the matrix. So that is great. That is done. And now if we navigate into there, we've got our Apple TV control. Great, so we've done our cinema room. We've got two very basic commands. So just to reiterate, all that's happening at the moment is when we click these buttons, it's going to turn the TV on, switch the AVR on, put the TV on the right channel, and put it on the main box. And then when you navigate into it, you've got all the controls. Now, obviously, we also have the kitchen. So what do we do there? So what you can do is you can go here and you can copy it to another room. So if you've already created rooms and you want these commands available everywhere, we should go copy to rooms. We choose the room that hasn't got this. So our kitchen, we're going to confirm, we're going to copy that, copy it to this room, confirm. So now when we go back to our kitchen, we've got the same two buttons. Now, obviously, it's not quite right yet. We need to now go into the properties, edit, and the commands we're going to need to change. So we're going to need to switch over so that, for instance, this power on command is going to need to go to a different matrix port. Because remember, we've got IR in the cinema and IR in the kitchen, so we change that, but that's all we need to change. Oh, how have I done that? Oh, I managed to delete that somehow. I think you get the idea anyway. I've managed to accidentally click delete. Never mind. Oh, no, I haven't. For some reason the commands aren't showing, but I can see they're there. Probably have to load out and back in to get those back. Either way, so what I'm going to now do is I'm going to go to my project and I'm going to publish it. So just you remember from last week, I showed you that this QR code is a very simple way of navigating your phone straight to this page. If I now publish this, now this is live, if I navigate to the IP address, now we're in our interface. So this is the interface that we've just created with control. So if you were in this home now and you access this on any device, you can now control this system. As I say, what we've done is very basic and we've sort of done it in 20 minutes, but you can see the principle of how simple this is. And again, the fact that it's a web interface rather than needing specific tablets or an app or something like that is really helpful, because absolutely any device will be able to access this. So that's kind of it for today, I think. Let's go back to the questions page. Let me stop my screen share from working. So does anyone have any questions about that, or anything you want to see? Andy's question, can you see a list of the Enado command line anywhere? Yes, you can. So if you go to www.myenado.com, I'm aware I'm not screen sharing anymore. Let me just re-enable my screen share. Hold on. So we're back on screen share now. So if you go to myenado.com, so these are the templates. Where can you see? There is a list somewhere of all the commands, isn't there?
There is a list of all the Enado devices that is basically there.
Yeah.
But all the ones that you want to import from the global cache will be on the global cache
Yeah.
site.
So these are all the devices that have Enado specific drivers written for them. So that is like devices that have pre-built control pages like remotes. Everything else is on global cache's site. So essentially, if the IR codes exist on global cache's site, global cache's site is, you need to sign up for their site, but it's free. But essentially, if you have a sign up for a global cache account, you get access to the whole database, and we have the whole database. They've basically got everything. It's very rare that we ever get a situation where global cache don't have the IR codes. Where it can be more tricky is if you want to do an IP driver, because global cache don't carry all the IP drivers for everything. It might be down to you just to find the IP driver for whatever. I mean, they're never that difficult to find. You know, there's lots of websites that have, you know, full IP packs for everything. So you just got to find the IP commands, and if global cache doesn't have them, you can put them in manually. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay. So the Mini is available now, Kevin. In fact, the Mini is what we're using for this. So the Mini has now become their main product. Their main so this deal here is for another Mini, and they're currently available and shipping now. So you could have one if you got your order in quickly. You could have one tomorrow. So Andy's question: what about feedback support, volume levels on AVR, etc.? So one area that's been worked on at the moment that isn't currently working is you can obviously send commands to devices, but what isn't working at the moment is two-way communication. So that's currently their next big project, is working on support for two-way communication. So polling devices for their current status. What is the current volume? What is, you know, what's the light level on this particular bulb, all that sort of stuff. So currently that isn't supported, but it will be. I've seen some sort of demo layouts and stuff like that for that sort of thing. So that is coming. As I say, Enado is actually relatively new. They've obviously been working with Wirestorm for a while, but the Wirestorm support has been very specific, doing very specific integrations. Now they've moved out on their own to start doing their own sort of platform that's going to support everything. Some of these features are just being pushed back a little bit because to get it sort of working and available, but two-way support is on its way. Thanks, Carlton. Right, well, if there is no more questions, that's a great question. Not officially, but you could definitely make it work. I have all the IP strings for the modular matrix and the IR strings actually, so it wouldn't do any of the IR pass-through stuff like the new stuff can do. But in terms of just talking to the matrix over IP, yes, absolutely. There isn't a pre-existing driver for it, but we can make one very quickly. There's essentially 16 switching commands. I have them all in a text document on my computer that I can send you. That would not be difficult to do at all. We could knock that together for you in 10 minutes. Yeah, Kevin. So essentially, it does. The only feature you don't get. So one of the sort of big advantages of the new MHub system. So basically, any product that has U control. So that is the MHub 431s and 862s, and the MHub Pro 2s, and the old Pros as well. Any system that has U control has the function of a control system being able to use is what they call expanded I/O. So has the ability for another control system to use its IR ports as though it's its own. Those are unique to those series of matrix. There is sort of a big investment in, and there's all sorts of patents over that sort of capability as well. I won't go into today, but essentially that they're the only matrices in the world that are allowed to work in this way. It's why the HDA Control 4 driver is by far the best video matrix driver ever made, because they've got these extra features. But you can, in terms of just switching and sort of doing all the standard matrix stuff, input A to output 1, etc. Yes, absolutely. You can do all versions of the previous M Hub will support that. It's just those extra features of expanded inputs and outputs with the IRs you don't get on the older ones. Which models do you have? And in the case of those, in that case, what you need to do if you wanted to integrate IR support is you just need to purchase. You got the beige one, so yeah, that's the. So the nice thing about that model is you wouldn't have to write any new drivers. So the current driver would work with that device in terms of switching. It's just the IR ports wouldn't be available. What you'll have to do is get a little IR expander that Enado do. And that will let you generate IR commands that way. You wouldn't be able to do it through the matrix because that's a unique feature to the newer models. Andy has a good question that I was wondering myself, actually. I believe once you're set up, it would work. So Andy's question was, does the Enado MIDI work with no WAN? And my belief is you'll need a WAN to initially set it up.
Yes, in order for you to register your Enado online, you will initially need a WAN.
Yeah.
But anything after that, you can just rely on your LAN.
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard Chris then, but essentially, like a lot of these things, initial setup, you'll need a WAN because you'll need to download everything. You need to register the unit, register the license, etc. But actually, once you're set up, it doesn't rely on WAN to operate. It can just operate on the LAN, much like the HDANYWHERE matrices do. Okay, great. Well, if no one's got any more questions, Andy, if you want a demo unit, all you need to do, tell you what, I'm just going to put, I'll check out who your account manager is, but let me just email me, and I'll sort it out for you. Great, lovely. All right. So yeah, both drop me an email. I'll get those sorted for you. Thanks all for coming. So next week we're going to do a similar thing again, but we're going to use Just Add Power, so an IP-based system, which is a little more in depth because rather than having one video matrix, you've got lots of different endpoints to talk to. So from a setup, it's quite similar, but from a setup perspective, it gets a little bit more complicated. But we'll show you that next week. So that's more for commercial use, whereas the HDMI stuff's more residential. Right, I've really enjoyed this. So thanks for coming, everyone. I hope this has been helpful, and look forward to hearing you all soon.